Well, we're live, so yeah, here we are going and going. So I can't see who's looking on over there, but well, hi everybody, Bill Janishak, and I want to introduce Mike Pierce. He's a superstar doctor and neurologist, chiropractic neurologist, diplomat in functional EEGs. We're kind of getting into the brain, but the the real reason that I wanted to get him on is we have these conversations. So we're good friends. We hang out, and I was talking to him on when we were talking, like Monday or Tuesday or whatever, and I was talking about the depression. And uh, if you're watching this on Facebook, I had put a post out about I've seen so many patients lately with just this depression and anxiety, and uh, it was just kind of crappy. And we started having a conversation about it, and we always talk about we have these conversations, and I go, oh my god, we should have recorded that, and we never had. So we started talking about it, and I said, well, hold on, let's do this. What are you doing Thursday? Let's just schedule something. I'll throw it on StreamYard, and we'll put it out, so if anybody has any conversation or any questions, you can get on there and talk about it. So anyways, you got anything to say to start it off? I mean, real informal. We're just chatting, but I just wanted people to have a chance to pipe in if they wanted to.
Well, thanks for the invitation, Doc. I really I just enjoy this so much. We don't get to we get to talk very very often. We don't get to visit each other as much, and I'm trying to get more of that with all these lockdowns are finally letting up. But yeah, I mean depression. I think it's extremely important for people to realize that your financial wellness and your fear of the political state of the world does affect depression. It's a real thing, and doctors try to compartmentalize that. If you're worried about issues like gun control and you're worried about issues like abortion, whatever side you're on, if you're worried about the politics of your local and state and country, if you're worried about international politics, if you're worried about money, if you don't have savings, if you have savings and you still don't know what's going to happen, you'll worry about it. So I try to explain to people that you can be depressed for esoteric reasons that you don't always put your finger on, and it may not just be because you have a infection or a bodily ailment, or that you have maybe a family history. And so that often leads into the discussion of, is your depression a state like depression, or is it a trait like depression? And I guess that's where some people are kind of like Eeyore all the time. They're it's just who they seem to be. They're just always like, oh bother. And they wake up that way, they go to bed that way. That's who they appear to be. I don't believe it's who they are always, but it's who they appear to be, as opposed to the person who gets triggers for depression, like when I'm at work I'm depressed, or when I deal with a certain family member I'm depressed, or when I deal with a certain issue, or I'm faced with a certain trigger out in the world, or my weight, or whatever it is. There's a trigger that triggers this compartmentalized depression, and those are the things that counselors do such a good job dealing with, and they really have trouble with the state-based, or rather, I'm sorry, the trait-based depressions, which are just, it seems like it's ingrained in your DNA. And I think those are more nutritional and biochemical, and maybe partly SNP related, and partly the political environment. So I don't know. What do you think of that?
Well, it's interesting. I like the fact that you said it, about trait. Some people are, well, poo, I guess it was going to rain anyways. And I don't even know if what I was seeing was real, or if my just reticular activating system, the thing that makes me kind of pay attention to things, if I'm just noticing more. But like I said, from the comments that I got back, it was it seems that there's more. And I don't know if, like you said, if it was the result of being locked down 2 years ago and not try getting back with that, the political environment. I hate the man, and no matter what version of the man, whether it's political or big pharma or big sugar or whatever, but it's almost like it's it's the plan to keep us in angst and separate us. So I think that's amazing. But I want you had just done that, finished the mental health thing, right?
Yeah, I looked at the chemistry from William Walsh and that lineage that came from Carl Pfeiffer, and before him Linus Pauling, and before them World War I doctors that were looking at men who had, you know, shell shock and battle fatigue, and they had these tremors from the war, and they would walk weird, and they would have all these problems, and they would cure them with niacinamide and niacin back then. And that became the foundation of orthomolecular psychiatry, which was named by Linus Pauling, a two-time Nobel Prize winner, and it led to this whole world of what was called megadosing. And my God, you're a pariah if you give 10 times the RDA for any vitamin or mineral.
Well,
So
I read Linus Pauling was one of my first nutritional here. I was at a used bookstore and I bought like a big thick ass book like that, and it was just his study. I didn't know anything about it, but I remember looking at his CV. The guy had like 12 doctorates and you know 2 Nobel Prize. He was just, I was like, wow, this guy knows everything. But and he was the first one with the megadosing of vitamin C. He was probably one of the first quacks too, because they called him a quack. They go, like you said, well, that's just crazy. But I'm curious what you said. What's the mechanism for the you said niacinamide?
Well, yeah. So I'm really glad you asked that, because for a long time, everybody thought it was these intracellular mechanisms that transform one thing into another thing, like, you know, the methylation cycle that we talk about a lot, which is really valid. And the methylation cycle, you know, you turn something like methionine into homocysteine, and you turn into SAMe, which is S-adenosylmethionine. You have to know all those words, but those are words that people are using to describe proteins that you eat that become molecules that change your emotions. And so they looked at that and focused on that. And what Bill Walsh found was that there is an opposite under and over methylation in the DNA. And so it turns out that if you're distracted by the transformation of one chemical into another inside the cell, that's a different thing than the expression of genes at the histones inside the nucleus of the cell. So you're always inside the cell, but you're either inside the nucleus making
Okay, we'll do
DNA,
this for a second. So
or you're
now back up, and use little words. Be, and just kind of explain, because like, you know, the new Facebook thing, I can't see who's looking. It's just Facebook users. But
right.
now explain what you just said for lay people.
Yeah. So for a long time, everybody thought that you take vitamins and minerals and they affect how you make molecules that are neurotransmitters or that are chemical signalers. And that's a viable model, and it works to some degree. But recently, there's been these papers that came out saying that, man, that whole idea that serotonin deficiency or chemical imbalance is responsible for depression, and that the mechanism of SSRIs was really kind of debunked recently. And so there's been this huge explosion in the world of papers right now saying you can't simplify neurotransmitters into this idea that you have a chemical imbalance, you go to your psychiatrist, you get a prescription for an SSRI, it boosts your serotonin level, and you're fine. And so what Linus Pauling and Carl Pfeiffer and William Walsh did was they started looking at DNA. They started looking at your genes, and they started saying that, man, maybe there is an expression of fundamental proteins and mechanisms deep down inside your cells that occur way before you start making macromolecules or molecules that are used in your mood and in your neurotransmitters. And that is contrary, because this idea that they've talked about, and they banter about with this undermethylation and overmethylation concept, it's different in the DNA than it is in the cell. So a lot of people got distracted by the cell, and probably the most famous one was Amy Yasko, who does such a wonderful job explaining how these different chemicals are made and how we end up looking at methylation inside a cell. But what Walsh did was said, go deeper, go into the nucleus of the cell, go into the DNA of the cell, and that changes fundamentally how people react, and it is a contradiction that explains why some people get better when you're going the wrong direction, according to different methylation and undermethylation types of people. So the simple answer is we zoomed in deeper. We zoomed in much, much deeper. And that was what Walsh was famous for with his methylation ideas on things like niacin.
I mean, that's really interesting. And I was talking to somebody else, and I was, they were talking, well, I was talking to this guy, and then I couldn't get a straight answer. I said, oh, then you're probably talking to somebody pretty smart, because, with the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is the less you know, the more sure you are. And, because we'll go to these other continuing educations, and you start to dive deep into a subject, and it always starts out with, well, it depends. And as we dive deeper, now we're discovering, oh, this is what the cover of the book looked like. But now that we get in deep into chapter 3, we can see some nuances of why this is not working. Because I know 3 people right now that are trying to get off of the SSRIs, and one's having a terrible detox and nausea, and it's just crazy. And I've been telling her, I said, clean up your diet and exercise, because is there anything that's been studied to be more effective than exercise? I mean, it's, I said, it's free, it's easy, it takes effort. I don't feel, my knee hurts, my back hurts, and I can't. I said, you can do something.
Yeah.
And that's the amazing thing that happened, because, well, what's the mechanism with exercise in the brain to fight off the depression?
Well, I think that there are a number of people who can eat their way out of depression without exercising, because you can get people to almost a washboard stomach without exercise, just by eating a certain way. So we know that happens. It's not to say that exercise isn't good or that it doesn't help. It's just that food is clearly the fundamental foundation. But when you look at exercise, I think exercise increases the metabolism, such that probably the most important factor is that it makes insulin resistance improved. There's if you go back to those Guyton's textbooks of physiology, there's 2 real ways that you make an insulin receptor more sensitive when they've become dulled. One is salt, and the other is exercise.
Real basic on that. But when you're working, like, and you're moving, like, when people don't want to act, or when they're so depressed that I know I should, but I just can't muster up the oomph to get going, what would you suggest to do a first step? If somebody says, okay, I want to do, I have to get over this, but it takes everything that I have to.
Yeah. Boy, I know. Your self-talk, your whole self-talk agenda that is so well considered is where I would begin. I think that they're taking on too much. They have to take bite-sized pieces of exercise, and they have to talk to themselves differently. And that's your realm of NLP, in my opinion, of how they talk about perhaps exercise as a reward. Like, I'm going to go out and sit in the sunshine. And sometimes sitting in the sunshine and the wind is exposure therapy, and it's exercise. I mean, if you've ever sat on the deck of a ship for a while, you come in and you're tired. It's exercise to be exposed to the elements. So sometimes just giving them exposure to the elements as a reward, or I'm going to go for a walk, or I'm going to go have a sit. I had a neighbor that was 100 years old when I was growing up in high school in Wisconsin. And he used to meet me out on his bench, next door neighbor. He used to meet me out on his bench when I would come home from school, and he'd watch the garden. And I would say, how you doing? And he would say, I'm catching up on my sitting.
It's interesting is that nowadays people don't have to catch up on their sitting anymore, because we do that all day.
It's
But
true.
yeah, it is interesting, because with NLP, and then just the movement portion, well, whether you're moving, because one, it's a stimulus, but it's how you anchor that thought process to what you're doing. Because I mean, when I work out, I'm like, ugh, that's a tough one. And I don't think I ever go like, yeah, this is good, but I'm tied to the outcome. It was like, okay, after I get over this little thing, I'm going to feel like this, and that makes me happy. So I kind of anchor that way, where I look forward to it. It's where my homies are, and I get to talk crap to them when I walk in. I was like, I'm going to kick your ass today, and and we'll go back and forth. So there's that social aspect, because I don't think people realize the connection. In this day and age, people just think we're a bunch of levers and pulleys, and oh well, my back does this and my spleen does this, and then I do, and they're not together. And then even you will go to all the dirty hippies on the other side, that it's just that however I think, and that's going to be the best thing that I do. And like anything else, when there's a big bell curve, the extremes are usually inefficient. But if we understand that the mind's going to drive the meat suit to do that, and if we put the meat suit into its best thing, it's going to give feedback to the mind that's going to go back and forth. It's getting people into the state of I don't want to be here anymore. And it's almost like a dopamine thing, because dopamine is the thing that's encouraging you to move. But when you're down, I mean, I don't even know. I've never ever it just popped in my head. Is there a dopamine deficient in the people that are depressed for a while?
I think it's three things. I think that if you're as a doctor advising a patient to exercise, and the patient keeps resisting the exercise because they're not getting the reward, they're missing three cascades. They're missing the dopamine reward cascade. They're missing the endorphin reward cascade that makes them feel good and reduce pain. And that's almost like sex. That's amazing. And third one is the oxytocin, which is the male bonding, and really any bonding is the oxytocin of it's that bonding of people, whether they're whatever gender they are, or whatever the bonding is. It can be male bonding, it can be non-male bonding, it can be just really any kind of broness that happens, where you feel like you're with people. I mean, even when people drink alcohol, they get that little bit of "I love you, man," going on. and so those three cascades tell you there's something wrong with their chemistry. So if they're exercising and they're not saying, "Man, thank you for telling me to exercise," they're announcing to you that those three cascades are not working in their chemistry and they need adjustment. And it's mostly minerals. Most of the time, those people are mineral deficient and maybe B vitamin deficient, because they can't muster that chemical flow of making those three chemicals.
So what's a common reason for a mineral deficiency?
Well, they don't put it in their mouth. I mean, it's not in the soil. All this fertilizer talk that we have with Russia, and all the production of fertilizer coming from overseas, or whether we make it ourselves, is all NPK. It's nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus, it's not enough metals. There's nearly 70 minerals that we need, and they're all trace minerals, and if we don't get them, we can't function. And because they function as cofactors, they're cofactors or catalysts that help chemical reactions occur in our brain and our body, and without them we don't do well. So if you got bad soil, you don't have good minerals, and you don't have minerals in your food. And even if your food's organic, if it's California certified organic, it means that they've certified that there aren't any chemicals in there. Maybe. I beg to differ about that. But even if there were no chemicals in the food, it doesn't guarantee that some wise person put the minerals back in that we're supposed to have.
I had that conversation yesterday with someone. And I'm trying to, I think it was a patient, but I was at the gym, and I was talking to one of the people there, and we were talking about our favorite fruits, and then we talked about how if you go to the grocery store and you eat a tomato, there's no taste, there's nothing there, because, and they start talking about, oh well, I try to get organic, and I said organic doesn't mean anything anymore, because like you said, it means that they didn't spray any crap on it, supposedly. I said, but it doesn't tell you that there's anything in the soil. And Mercola has something that with, and I forget the word, it's like sustainable organic, or that actually says that the soil was fed.
Yeah.
And we need, oh my God, we need more of that.
Yeah, so you got to take a mineral supplement, if you're not taking a mineral supplement in America, you're deficient. I mean, it's just simple math. 50% of Americans don't get the RDA for magnesium.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's just the RDA. And the RDA is the bare minimum for you not to have a disease.
That's right.
And that's not even optimized. That I was looking because, I push magnesium. That's one of my top 5 favorites, because nobody has it, and it makes such a big change for little investment. And I was talking about, I think they said you need 3.25 milligrams of magnesium per pound of body weight.
Okay.
But I tell them, but I don't know how deficient you are. And I said, it's like if you go to Home Depot and you buy a one coat cover paint. Well, if the walls absorb it, it doesn't matter what the label says, you have to be able to get the job done. And then I always tell them to use bowel tolerance and then just back off from there, and the body will tell you what it's doing. But it's the same thing. And I push a lot of the Himalayan sea salt. Do you have a favorite mineral supplement?
Well, there's a bunch of them. I mean, if you're getting organ meats, you're getting some minerals. If you're getting bone broth, you're getting minerals. If you're vegetarian and you're taking Trace Minerals Research brand liquid, that's very good. There's a bunch of pills and liquids that are multi-mineral trace minerals. I'm not a big fan of some of the colloidal mineral formulas, only because a number of them were contaminated with aluminum in the past, and they were poor at reporting the quality. So it's not to say that all colloidals are bad. I'm just wary of them. Ionic minerals are perfectly absorbable, and we absorb quite a bit of them. The big reason that we don't absorb our minerals is because of plant phytates, which is to say plant anti-nutrients. So if you're really trying to get minerals, don't take them with plants. Don't take them with plants. Take them with meat.
Yeah, that's interesting because with the impossible meats and stuff, people always ask me about that. I said, well, it's impossible to get the nutrients that you need from those things, and so I guess the name is okay. And I have a vast diet, but I love salads.
Me too.
But yeah, I love my Traeger too, so I can smoke up some, give me a good steak, and it's crazy because you can even for the meat eaters out there listening, when you get a good steak, say you get a Wagyu that's been, it's green pastures, they're massaged, they're taken care of, everything's just great. And it's like melting in your mouth. It's like heaven. I'm just like, oh my gosh. And then go to, the local market and pick up whatever they have out there, and you can taste the difference. That's based on the stuff that's put in there. And that's the same thing that's going on in us. That if we're not taking care of us, that's how our bodies are.
Yeah.
And kind of backtracking back over into the anxiety and depression, I was thinking about, I'm theorizing that people aren't probably healthy in the first place, and whatever it is, it kind of pushed them over. So maybe we're seeing this in the deficiency because they're not moving and they're not eating right, and it's finally getting into their brain.
Well, you got to look at the body and the brain together. I think the metabolism of every organ is so important, and if you're fatigued, your brain is not going to work right. If you're not digesting right, if you're insulin resistant, if you're omega-3 and omega-6 deficient, you're not going to do well. Mineral deficient, it's going to be terrible. I like to take a really good small organic chicken, not those Franken chickens, but a small organic chicken, and I like to put it in a pressure cooker, and I like to make chicken soup. And when you eat that chicken with the bones, the broth made from the bones of that chicken,
yeah,
and the fat of that chicken and the skin of that chicken, and you eat the actual meat. It doesn't matter even if you're just eating some of the white meat or the dark meat and you're not eating the other organs, you're not eating the bones, you're not eating those things. You still have that sticky feeling on your teeth of the fats. And it's so incredibly satisfying to have that feeling of, my goodness, I'm getting the nourishment I need. And it's just foundational. It's really primal. It's a very primal feeling. It's like eating
There was
sushi.
something that I was watching about, and it was, I don't even remember, but it was a while ago. But they were talking about, 150 years ago, when we raised chickens through their full lifetime to naturally, and they were out eating things and doing. But a family of four that worked hard and labored all day, they could have one chicken, not like you said, not Franken chicken, but they'd have one chicken, whatever vegetables or whatever side dish or potatoes or with that, and it would fill up four people. And it was just this small little piece. How does that happen? Is because it's full of nutrients and the body's getting fed and nourished. And it's amazing. And like I said, I think it this depression and the anxiety, it has to go back to what you're eating and not what's eating you. And
Yeah.
and it's just sad to me, because like one of the things, you talk about my place when I'm talking to the patients, or when I do one of my talks or something, I always talk about I said, the pain is not the worst pain that you're going to have is not the burning sciatic pain or the radiculitis or the migraine. The worst pain that you're going to have is the unfulfilled life that you have, when you can't play with your child on a daily basis, and you can't walk your daughter down the aisle, and you can't take that trip that you've always wanted to. And it's so small of these little losses. You kind of like, oh, well, tomorrow I'll do it later. And you keep telling yourself like this until you look back on your life and you're going like, I've missed out on all this stuff for so long. I don't even know my kids. I don't have the relationship with my friends that we have, but it plays that thing in your mind, and in your head, you're just like, okay, well, this is just life. And I'm watching people come in, because I'll ask them about, I said, okay, well, what's the stopping you from doing? What do we need to help you be able to do again? I don't know. I just can't do that. But it's not that big. Those are people, they're just like, it's okay. I can handle it. And I'm like, wow, that's the most dangerous thing that you can do, is nothing.
Yeah, they're defeated.
Yeah. And I'm looking for like words of wisdom or clinical diagnosis or something that I can do for. And at that point, I can't help somebody that doesn't know what direction they're going. We can adjust them. I can make the spine better. Oh, okay, now you can move like this, or your straight leg raise is, now, 92 degrees where it was, 72. And I can feel real glad about myself as I sure helped that patient, but they still walk out and they still feel they're still not living better. So I don't know. I thought you would have, and you always do, is the insight that me and everybody listening can glean, because it hurts me.
Well, you're right. I had a mentor, a very old doctor who was one of my bosses. He's a psychiatrist. And he used to insist that when he would meet a new patient, he would sit down with them, and he would insist that they tell him what they were going to do with their health if he could wave a magic wand and make them better, because he pretty much could. Yeah. And if he could, and this was an orthomolecular psychiatrist. He was a nutrition guy. He was a food helps your mood guy. And so while he was a psychiatrist and he was fully trained in all the, couch talk therapy methods and, all the Jungian, Freudian, Adlerian, all those methods, he knew that whole alphabet of methods and could shrink your head like you couldn't believe. He still said chemistry was a big deal, but he always asked a person, he said, what are you going to do? What plans have you got And if you don't have plans, I can't treat you. You have to tell me what you want to do. And it can't be something like, oh, I want to walk my child across the aisle, or I want to go and attend my child's graduation. It has to be something more. It has to be something bigger. It has to be something not audacious, but something bigger that's for you. Like, I want to participate in this thing, or I want to build this thing, or I want to go study this thing, or I want to go enjoy this thing, or I want to go dance in Greece, or I want to smash plates in Italy, or I want to do something, and not just one event, but a thing. Like, I want to learn Aikido, or I want to learn how to use, I want to learn how to make shoes, or I want to learn something that's a process. And he would make them tell him what were they going to do with their health if they could regain it. And if they couldn't tell him what they were going to do, or if it was a piss poor explanation, he would say, "Nope, not going to help you," and make him try again.
That's interesting, because I ask the patients the same thing. I usually do the history and everything that we're supposed to, but I give them an imaginary genie. I said, tell me 3 things that you're going to do once, imagine, it's a month from here, 2 months or whatever it is. I said, and you no longer have your back pain, your neck pain, your stomach is cleared up, your brain fog is doing well, your flexibility is better. What are you going to do differently once you have all that stuff? And one of the saddest things is people look at me like deer in the headlight. They're like, well, I'm going to go back and do. I said, so you want to go back and do exactly the same things that got you where you were? So should we schedule redoing this again, in 3 months, or is 4 months better for you? But I explained to them at the point, and I think they're used to going into the doctor's office, with Nurse Ratchet behind the frosted counter, taking the copay, weighing them, and saying, "What's your problem? Here's," well, not the red pill, but they'll give them the blue pill. And then they go back over, and then they just play this game. I'll pretend like I'm treating you, and you pretend like you're getting better, and then we'll see when the next phase comes in.
Yeah. You nailed it. Nurse Ratchet is really the caricature of the state of orthodox medicine. Nurse Ratchet is really the, I'll pretend to treat you, and you pretend to be a patient. And that is the tacit agreement that people fall into, and that's hopeless. It just doesn't address the real problem.
Yeah, and I hope everybody listening knows who Nurse Ratchet is. That's from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Yeah, so
Jack Nicholson.
Yeah, she was that central character that was so passive aggressive and so buttoned up and put together that she never committed anything that was overtly a crime, although she was clearly a criminal in her behavior of how she would manipulate and control the men in the ward that she was responsible for. They were locked up in a mental institution, and the character was trying to fight against the system, and trying to wriggle out and find some wriggle room. Where can all these men have some humanity? And he would just push on different levers and different places and try to get some injection of mild humanity into this institution. And she would just find a reason to stop every time he did it.
Yeah, I just remember, hey, Chief, you got to get over here so Nurse Ratchet can't get to us, and just hide behind everything we need to do. But, if you look at it, that's a microcosm of what's going on. You do your job, and Nurse Ratchet, like you said, she's she's in charge. You're going to do this, you're going to do this, you're going to, follow my doctor's orders, do what you can. But like I said, when I go back and to treat the people, and once I explain, I said, I can treat your symptoms. I said, but we're holistic in our approach. That, would you not rather me treat you so that what I do actually has an impact on your life, rather than, like you said, okay, your back pain's gone. Because ultimate doctrine means teacher. And if I can't teach you how to get from where you are to where you want to go, then do we need to do this dance?
Yeah. Not everybody needs a transformative experience, but many people do, and they don't recognize that they need a transformative experience. They need to be shaken out of their rut. And I don't ever do that unless I'm asked. I never do it unless I'm asked. If the person isn't cognitive enough to take their own red pill, I'm not going to try to pry them out of that shell. I think that's a mistake ethically for me. So I will not try to pry them out of that shell. I might ask them or challenge them verbally, but I'm not going to go any further than that. I'll just be like, oh, okay, but I'll ask them. But beyond that, it's really up to them. Once they're ready, though, I'll be like, all right, it's time to pull the feeding tubes out of you like they did for Neo in The Matrix.
Well, it's interesting because like years ago, I was the biggest I'm still the biggest cheerleader of the patients that come in, but I found myself trying to convince them. And the old saying is, he who is convinced against his will is of the same opinion still.
Yep.
I'll fan your embers. If there's something in you that you want to do, I'll pour gasoline on it, but I can't put it there for you.
Yeah, you're either in my tribe. You're either in my tribe or not.
Yeah, well, it kind of brings me to an interesting question. So, like, I see mostly people on the front end of their journey. So, I'm the big bucket that comes down. I get headache, neck pain, back pain, car accident, gut problems, rehab, everything that I do. But so I get a vast majority of it. Now you're at the end of the spectrum because you're a specialist. You're an uber specialist that you get people on the end view. You're the detailed specialist. So you're not seeing everybody. But the people that you're seeing,
they've already been on some strict diet for years. They've seen dozens of doctors. Yes.
Yeah. So do you see a difference in those people? Do you see more people like motivated to change everything, or are they so beaten down by this time that they kind of, all right, another doctor. Hey, Rima, how are you doing? My auntie just came on.
Oh, good.
So, where do you see them on the spectrum?
I see. I'm so glad you mentioned this because it's such a clear pattern. It's such a clear pattern. These people are honest. These people are engaged. These people are not lazy. They're disciplined, but they're tired. They're exhausted. They're often overspent. They spent most of their money on somebody else, a bunch of other people. They've tried everything, and usually I end up with them. The pattern is that they've done 95% of the right stuff, and they just had one or two key linchpins that they didn't know, and they're usually foundational. Like, for example, when I sit down with a person who's in their 80s and I say, you need saturated fat, and they go, are you kidding? I can have saturated fat? And I'm like, yeah. And all the guilt and all the pain and all the loss comes back from them saying, in 1954 or whatever it was, the U.S. started saying that we can't have saturated fat. And I've been following that like a good soldier for the last 50 years or whatever, and 70 years or whatever. And I'm like, you know what? You can have saturated fat. And you need saturated fat. And part of the reason you're sick is because your body's full of omega-6s and other fats that are not what you need. They're sick fats, they're bad fats, and you need to replace them. And it could take a while to replace every little fat molecule in your body with better fat molecules. And you need to have more saturated fat. And they go home and they have this guilty pleasure of, oh my God, butter? Isn't that like evil? and there's an existential conflict in them that they were afraid to cross until they met me, and I'm like pushing them over the line. I'm not really pushing them, but I'm showing them the line and going, yeah, you can have this. You can enjoy the sunshine. The sun isn't poison. Fat isn't poison. Meat isn't poison. Red meat isn't poison. What is that? Yeah,
that's my butter. Butter makes everything better.
Yeah. So I don't know what the secret is for them, but for every one of them, it's something different. Like, they didn't know that they could do this or that. They didn't know that it's usually some fundamental assumption that they had a false loyalty to. And this is really your department. They had some kind of false loyalty to this concept that they could never give up. And it was that fat was bad. It was a very common one. Saturated fat was bad, or that I can't really enjoy smoke and charred food. I was told that you can't have any brown stuff. No charred food, no smoked food, no brown food that's been blackened on a grill. That's all carcinogenic. Red meat causes cancer. Virtuous people eat vegetables. You have to eat your vegetables. I mean, George Bush was bad because he said broccoli was bad. Wow. I mean, we get to really re-examine everything. And I think to answer your question, there is about a fundamentally important 5% of something that they didn't look at. And it's my job to challenge that with them.
Well, so this is very interesting. This is one of the reasons why I like you and I like sending the patients and working with patients with you, is that you don't have an axe to grind. You're gonna send the patients where they need to go, but it's based on evidence based, and not the bullshit evidence that pushes the agenda, but it's just like, okay, well, what does the clear evidence say? And then having the ability to read more than the headline and the abstract of the study, and looking about the details and going, oh, well, in this demographic, they need more, whatever. And this has been vilified. I tell my patients all the time, eat more salt. I give them my electrolyte, my pre-workout, and the Himalayan sea salt, about a tablespoon or a teaspoon of that, about 3/4 teaspoon of new salt, which is potassium chloride, little magnesium. I squirt in some sort of something that makes it not taste like sweat, usually like a lemon or something. Mix it up. I'll drink that down, and it's like you said, they'll go like, I like salt. I can get salt in. Oh yeah, and they're happy. Then I get a few other people that'll come over and they'll say, well, that's going to give my high blood pressure. I'm like, yeah. Why do you think that's true? Well, because everyone knows. I'm going, let's look what the data says. And there's a great book, and I don't know if you read it. It was called The Salt Fix, and it was by some pharmacist, and I can't pronounce his name for the life of me. Brilliant.
Yeah, me either.
And but it was like, I remember sitting there, and I'm like, it was one of the things. I never had a salt fight in there, but we're always told, oh, don't eat too much salt. It was the first time I'm like, how come I never asked myself that question? And I'm like, we've been duped again.
Yeah.
And that was in the 50s.
Yeah, that was Ansel Keys in the 50s, who
Yes.
did his 7 countries study and said, fat causes heart disease. And we believed it, and we bought it hook, line, and sinker, even though the same year that he published his study, sometime in the 50s, it was debunked. They showed the 35 countries that he cherry-picked his data from and said, you're a nut. And we still believed him.
Yeah. And you know why it came down? If you remember reading the book, it was because he was like Edison. He was a great marketer, and he was louder, and he was a bit of a bully. Yeah. And went over and, I forget who was president then. I think it was Johnson. And they put it into the guidelines, governmental guidelines for health, which how the government works. And once it's in there, it's harder than hell to get out, because now they're pushing the agenda. How long did it take us to get rid of the stupid food pyramid?
Yeah.
And most people don't even know that. I mean, that was marketing. There was no science in that. There's no science in anything else. So when we're talking about depression and anxiety and mental disorders and all this degenerative stuff, we're talking about science. Like I said, you don't have an axe to grind. It's like, what does it say? What's the body need? What are we getting? What are you toxic in? How are we moving? What's the brain doing? And fix it?
Well, you know, I learned, I think the best thing that I ever did in my career was take interns, because interns will teach you and act as a mirror to your own psyche and your own ego and your own deficits and your own blind spots like nothing else is, because they're educated and they're curious and they're new and they're fresh and they're motivated and they will show you every deficit you've got if you're willing to look at them. And I really learned a ton from my medical chiropractic interns over the years, neurology interns, because they would challenge me in ways that I had blind spots I couldn't understand. And I think that they'll ask questions and they'll ask you the why behind the why, and it will blow away your ego. It will keep you up at night. It'll illustrate your blind spots, and you will go to a point where your ego will be blasted. And I think the thing missing from modern doctors is they never get the ego stroke that we all need. And I'm the first to tell you that you must satisfy the ego of human beings and human doctors. But after that's been satisfied, there's this enlightening or awakening where you're free of that and you're just curious and you're just having fun because you've been satisfied. Your ego's been satisfied. And the new doctors don't get that unless they have a success early in their career or even late in their career, when somebody can show them that they've helped a patient have a true reversal of illness. And when you've had enough patients, and it doesn't take that many, but you've had, and you know this already, but I'm telling this to the audience, when you, as a doctor, you've helped a few patients have true reversal of an illness, that satisfies you like drinking electrolytes. It satisfies you like eating saturated fat to a degree that your ego goes, I have value, I can help people, I understand. And then your ego is quiet for the rest of your life. You've had enough satisfaction.
Yeah.
And you're able to move forward, and the next patient that comes in, you're just like, oh, I wonder what's going to happen next. And you don't need an ego stroke, and you don't need that constant stroking of, well, I am the psychiatrist and I have to write a prescription and I am the gatekeeper and I am the person in control and I make you better and I make the decisions and I write the songs.
It makes the whole world sing. Well, you know, it's interesting because we're talking about the physiology and the psychology. You go back into Maslow. It says once we get rid of, you know, the I'm not hungry and I have food and shelter, and then we get into the social game, we have to get into our ego, our sense of purpose. And then once we get through that, as you go up the hierarchy, we finally get to self-actualization, where you want to give for others and get them involved and make them the hero that we had. So I think that's amazing. That's what Rima agrees with you.
I see. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
Learn from, but you know what? It is interesting because they'll ask questions that maybe you don't think, because you know when we think and we get on a path and go, okay, like that, and they'll say, what about that? And you go like, wow, yeah, let's look at that, or no, and here's why. But if you get all those questions, like I said, the answers are really never as good as the questions. If we ask the right questions, we're going to get better answers, right?
Yeah.
And when we think of things, at least when I think of things, I'm a little biased. I think, oh, that was a damn good question that I was going to ask, and then I'll answer it on my own agenda. But if it gets filtered through other people, I think that's even better. And so when I, and this is how I even thought about this, it was a question: why are there so many depressed and anxious people around? And are we doing something different, or what can we change? And then that's the question, and that's why we're here today. So I wonder if the people that are not feeling the best that they can, whether clinical depression or anxiety, anxiety disorder is kind of like fibromyalgia. It's just like, well, or irritable bowel. It's kind of something in this general area. We'll just have a diagnosis. But I wonder if they'd ask themselves, why do I feel like this?
Yeah.
You know, in NLP, we usually talk to people who said, when did you decide that? Because we have to give meanings to everything that we have. So, oh, my dog died. Oh, that means that, oh, my poor, companion's gone. Or it could be like, oh, great, I get a new puppy. It depends on how you look at it and based on references and beliefs. But I think we've been so beaten down lately that what are we going to do?
Well, we do have to resist. We really do have to realize that we have power and we can resist, and we can just be kind of thick and say, no, I'm not going to do that. And it works. We have power as culture. We have power as individuals, and it will give us a little bit of headaches, and it will cause us a little bit of trouble. But generally, saying a little more no, or a little more, are you kidding me? And resisting has tremendous power. That guy, Matthias Desmet, who talked about mass formation, the whole idea that people get sucked into a Nazism, or they get sucked into a COVIDism, or they get sucked into any ism. If even one voice is still out there saying, nope, don't believe it, it usually doesn't sweep over the whole continent. But once those voices stop, that's when the Nazi types sweep over the whole culture. So you've just got to keep that voice out there. Just keep it, even if one person is just out there with their ham radio, just do 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 do. I don't believe this. It's not true. That's all it takes.
What's the emperor has no clothes?
Yeah.
Once the out of the mouths of babes that it comes out, then you're going like, well, yeah, I was thinking that whole thing the whole time, but since you said it, and I noticed that during COVID, we were, it was early on, but it was the first or second day of the lockdown, and we did a StreamYard with some friends of ours. I think we had 6 people on the show. I had done a version of the podcast. I had you on there when I was doing my COVID series, and I had Glenn Morshower, who's an actor, on there, and he was a really great heart, and he has, because he's, well, I don't know because he's an actor or if he's an actor because of it, but he has a way of communicating. People really build a good rapport with him. And we finished that up, and he goes, well, you know what? Let's do this again. So, with technology, we got on StreamYard, and there were, like I said, I think there were 6 of us on. We ended up talking for like 3 hours, but we had 50,000 people watching, between everybody sharing and them sharing and all these people like that. And it was amazing, the feedback that we had gotten. And I forget why I was even bringing that up, but it was the technology that we have, and the reach that we can get is going to be important. And I'm hoping, and it's my intent, that by bringing up topics like, why is there depression and anxiety? Why are our diets changing? Mental health, physical health, everything else that we can bring on, and let people know that there's different ways of handling things, and you're not getting it by your traditional way. And we've talked about that too. It's like, you can either get results or use your insurance, but you're not going to get both. And when we're kind of handcuffed sometimes by our license, and well, you can't say that, you're going to get the hand slapped. But if we can have these conversations so that we can ask questions, and when we ask the questions, somebody out there, it's going to change somebody's life. They're going to go like, orthomolecular, what's that? And they may be just taking their minerals and change their lives. I don't know, but I appreciate it.
Well, that triggers me to think about
Well, I didn't
something
mean
that,
to trigger you on you were talking about mental health.
no, in a good way, in a good way. A trigger maybe for our generation doesn't always mean something bad.
Yeah, that's true.
Trigger means to me it sets off the next reaction, which is a good thing sometimes.
Yeah.
And for me, most of the time. So that triggered a thought in me, which was, um, you and I have talked about entrepreneurship an awful lot. And
Mhm.
the other day I saw something, I thought of you. I was watching YouTube and I saw Alex Hormozy, the
Oh, yeah.
multi-billionaire with his wife who does this wonderful job. He's so inspiring. And he was talking about making billions of dollars and becoming super, super wealthy using, I mean, the guy doesn't sell a product, he sells a service, and it's gyms and gym memberships and essentially fitness. And he's a big, beefy, muscular guy.
Yeah, he's yoked.
Yeah, and so he's just teaching everybody some really, really good ideas. And he was saying, you've got to do something that is that people are going to buy over and over again, like Starbucks. He was talking about the Starbucks model. And I just love listening to this guy. He's so inspiring because he didn't sell a thing. He didn't sell a gadget or a widget. He sold a service, and that's really hard to do. And so he said, I sold a service and I became a multi-billionaire. And to me, that's just inspiring. But in the talking of it, he talked about needing some recurring service. And there has to be a way that we can engage in some kind of non-rent seeking behavior where we can help people get better. Because Peter Thiel, the famous investor who was behind PayPal and a bunch of other companies, multi-billionaire, he said that every business has a dirty little secret, and that's the secret to making money. And I know that in healthcare, one of the dirty little secrets in healthcare is that it doesn't cost that much to get people better. It doesn't
Yeah.
cost that much to figure it out. It doesn't cost that much to diagnose them. It doesn't cost that much to treat them. It doesn't cost that much to keep them well. And people are a lot like herds. If you have a herd of cattle or a herd of rats or a herd of ants or a herd of whatever it's not always called a herd, but whatever it's called, a murder of crows or whatever it is, whatever the thing is, the name for the plural, it's pretty cheap to take care of them. And veterinarians know that, and farmers know that, and ranchers know that. And it's true for people too. And so I think that there is some variance among people and there is some skill involved in identifying what they need, but it's largely cheap to figure out what's wrong with people and to prevent illness. But we have our hands tied and our tongues tied by the Federal Trade Commission and by the USDA and by the Centers for Disease Control and by the FDA, all saying that we can't talk about prevention. We can't talk about cure. Now, we can talk about reversal right now, and they haven't taken that away from us yet, but they will. And we can't say diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. And yet all the literature is full of wonderful literature by PhDs that talk about literally how to prevent disease. But you can't talk about that as a clinician or as a doctor. You can only talk about that as a researcher.
Legal in or illegal in United States? The only way that you can cure something is medications or surgery, right?
That's been FDA approved. Yep.
Yeah. And so we as chiropractors can't cure back pain, and acupuncture can't cure digestive issues, and nutrition can't cure anything. So
Yep. So we've got to engage governments and people and local governments and third world countries that are emerging markets, entrepreneurs around the world, to think differently about healthcare than than um, um, than the typical entrepreneur, which is how do I don't know what word to use. How do I extract rent-seeking behavior from my patients? How do I get people to recurrently come back to me? I mean, when I was a young person and I was thinking about chiropractic, my father told me, it's fine for you to become a chiropractor. Just figure out how to actually fix people so they don't have to keep coming back to you all the time. He said, if you're a cardiologist, you should be teaching people how to prevent heart attacks and how to not need you as a cardiac surgeon if you're a cardiac surgeon. And I said, I get it, Dad. And I proceeded to try to figure that out. And to this day, you and me try to figure out how to get people off the chiropractic table, because I don't want to see you in my office. I want to see you in the store. I want to see you in the theater. I want to see you on the tennis court. I don't want to see you in my office. Get the hell out. Get me somebody else to fix. I want to go play trombone. I don't want to fix people anymore. I mean, I do, but I don't need to, and you shouldn't need to.
No, and that's the point is well, there's a good chat. There's Bruce chimed in. Hi, Bruce.
Wow, that's amazing, Bruce. Thank you. That is, I mean, we as doctors can't say anything about our patients, but when you guys jump on and say stuff, it really touches me. That is marvelous, marvelous.
And that's the point. Is this is why I joined the cult of CrossFit.
Yes.
Is because I partnered with them because whenever it came out, I heard about this stuff, and it was functional fitness and doing this, and I said, well, functional fitness. I go, that's kind of what I do, at least what I call it. And then I asked him what it was, and you know what? Everyone listening, you want to make $1 billion? Do a CrossFit thing. They invented nothing. They just put these movements together, and then they created a community. But the point being is that I would have people come in, and then I would fix them. And I said, okay, now you have this body that we've made together, but now you have to go use it. And this is the way that you challenge it and you fix it and you get it stronger and more flexible, is to go out and use it. I still have patients come back on a maintenance thing, come in for an asymptomatic checkup.
Yeah.
Some people are, Bruce is a couple times a month. I get some people that are in once a quarter, and everybody's individual, but go out and use your newfound health to bring more joy. And it's great marketing, because now you're a human billboard, and for every one person out there, there's 100 people else that are looking at you and saying, I want to get where you were. And that way we don't have the same people all the time. And it's working. And then we can create that movement to make them better.
You're so right, Bill. I mean, isn't it true that like 8 to 10% of Americans have seen a chiropractor and that's it?
Yeah. And it's nuts to me, because I always just say, doctors are retarded in the fact, because we forget what we don't know. I can't remember what was like not to know. It's sort of like people watching this to go out and not read a stop sign. Well, once you kind of know what it is, you can't not see it anymore.
Yeah.
And so like when I think about, well, like my seizure condition. So I don't really remember having seizures and being that guy, but I know the impact that I've had since that. And for me to come back and be where I am at today from my health standpoint, I'm just like, how can you not want this? Come on, guys, I got some. And yeah, we just need more, I don't know, people to want more, or believe it's possible.
I think they've been bamboozled. I mean, they've been raised in a culture where they don't realize how restrictive their thinking is. They don't understand how possible it is to be. I mean, even our generation, we know how to do things, right? We know how to do stuff. And when I talk to some people of younger generations, they don't even conceive that they could do something like make a tool, or repair something, or heal something, or create something. They just feel so restricted, because that's like water to a fish. And if there's anything I could give as a message to people listening to this that haven't seen it, is the idea that you could be super healthy, and most people don't need to be sick, and most people could be healed. I can't prove this in the traditional way, but I've seen it in 27 years of practice. It is possible for most people to get better easily. It's possible for most people to prevent illness easily. It's possible for most people to get better. Yes, there's always going to be an outlier there that's going to come up, and I'm going to roll my eyes and go, yes, this one is a birth defect, and I can't fix this, and I don't know what to do, and we got to figure it out, and we have to, work harder and find somebody else. And maybe there's a need for a crazy wild drug, but the statistics on that are so vanishingly small that people have been brainwashed and bamboozled to think that most people wake up in the morning with headaches. Women should have menstrual cramps. Headaches are normal. It's normal for people to lose their vision and need glasses. Most of culture should lose their vision. No, most of the culture should not lose their vision and need LASIK surgery or glasses. Most people have indigestion. It's your body hates you and wants to gain weight. These are all myths, and they're all wrong. And while you can find an exception, the exception is vanishingly small. And my message to you is that most people can be well, and very, very few people will be an exception. And I must admit that that's true. But you need to understand that most of them are going to be super small. The people that have intractable illness and that require tremendously expensive care, tremendously small.
And that's the point. Is we go back into the mindset is, the first 4 years of your life, we're absorbing culture, programs that our parents and our culture, people around her, don't touch that, don't reach for that, that's not you, you should be quiet, children should be seen and not heard, you can't do that, you can't do that, oh, that's for them, they're the rich people, they're the poor people, and you're building this identity that you build up, and you never question it again. Then you go from 4 to 7 years old, where you're surrounded by people that are just like you, and you start to develop your social identity, and they're kind of telling you because they've been programmed the same way. So now you just take that and you never question it again. And and then if something does go wrong and you go back to the cultural thing, we're going to the man in the white suit with the stethoscope who's going to say, oh, it's a chemical imbalance. Well, you just need to take these pills and then you're going to be whatever. And this is serious stuff. And then that belief is just kind of ingrained even deeper. And to this day, I get patients that say, well, I have degenerative disc, I have arthritis, I have this.
I have a real condition that is unchangeable and doesn't get better.
It's like, I would, but and I go, yeah, we all do for a moment, but that's what we fix. Or the people that I have a herniated disc. Well, what happened? Well, 20 years ago, I was in a car accident. And I'm like, well, do you think you still have that herniated disc? No, but my neck still hurts. I go, well, it's not the herniated disc. This is something else. But ingrained, keep on going. And I think this is something with the anxiety and depression that we kind of started this with, is that our brains and our minds are meaning makers. I mean, whatever situation we have, we're going to give our meaning to it, and whatever we say inside that it is, that's reality to us. It's not actuality, but that's what they've gone with. So, well, my mom had migraines and my grandma had migraines, so I'm having migraine. Self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yeah.
So it's been just, it's crazy. But when we look at like all that's available to us, and like the work that you've done, and then the detail, and we go like, you can get over this. Let's just go in this direction, do X, Y, and Z. And here's why I think that this is why I'm really excited about the human condition, and going out and doing clinical rounds and showing people, because it's great when we talk about it and, well, here's my bent on the patient and here's your bent on the patient. We'll get somebody else's, what's their bent on the patient. Let's see what it looks like and let's look at the outcome. And then, who's ever listening or watching or cares can go over, you make up your own mind. Do you want to go this way or do you want to go that way? What's going to be better for you? But people don't get to see the alternative.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, for you people listening, me and Bill need your help. It takes a village to raise a child and to cure people and help people. And we need your help. We're trying to build a community here, and we need more people to weigh in and say stuff. We need more people to complain and tell their stories. We need more people to do stuff and act and offer skills and we're building this community, and it'll take some time, but we have lots of things in the works and lots of surprises for you next year and the year following. And there is resources out there to help you that you have no idea, and they're human living, breathing resources that are just waiting to help. And I know some of them, and they're offering to help me. and I can't even tell you how many people have come out of the woodwork to help me with resources in ways that I can't imagine. So there's going to be more for you, more goodies for you next year.
Yeah, and I think that, and anybody's listening, that if if you're going like that, yeah, this is just like Dr. blah blah, or this is my doctor said this, or this like that, put them in touch with it. If you're on Facebook or whatever we're on, wherever the streaming, put them in touch with Mike or me or something like that. Because if you get enough people talking about the same thing, it was just like, we're not the only one saying that the emperor has no clothes.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people can see that naked emperor running around and doing things, but coming together, because I know a lot of doctors and different practitioners, and most people are they feel the same way, but we need to kind of come together as the community and the doctors, and then show the work, like, that people, you can get better.
Yeah.
We can, not stop dreaming and not be limited by our meat suit or our mindset. So anyways, we could talk forever. I'm gonna I think we'll peace out here, and we got to do this again soon. Maybe we got some time. We'll try to do it. We'll try to cap it on at a certain time to so it doesn't go crazy. But if
this is great. This really gets me thinking.
Or something that you guys want to hear more about, then maybe we can touch on that next time.
Yeah, tell us what you need, and we work for you. So tell us what you want to hear about.
Well, that'll work. All right, man.
Thanks,
guys. We're gonna head out here. Share this. Thanks, Rima. You're a good girl. You'll help us. You can pop on next week or whenever we do this, and we'll answer your questions. All right, we're gonna end this out. Peace.
Thank you.
All right.